This happened a few months ago. I've been driving for Lyft for a few years now, and I usually stick to late night shifts. The roads are quieter and the tips are better. But there's a trade-off. Every once in a while, you get a story that stays with you. And not in a good way. I always considered myself careful. In all those years, I've had my fair share of strange passengers, but nothing even comes close to what I'm about to tell you. That night is the reason I finally installed a dash cam. It started off normal enough. Just me, the empty streets, and the odd mechanical noises my beat-up 2005 Volvo makes from time to time. It's old, but reliable. Around sometime after 2 a.m., I got a ride request from a convenience store nearby. Harmless on the surface, but for some reason I got this weird feeling in my gut the moment the request popped up. You ever get that feeling like something's wrong, but you can't explain why? That's exactly what hit me. As I drove up, I figured out why. The store was closed. No lights, no cars in the lot, not even the glow of a vending machine. Completely dead. And then I saw him. I slowed down just to get a better look. He was pacing outside the store, wearing a ratty hoodie that looked like it hadn't touched a washing machine in years. There was a literal hole in the sleeve. His movements were jerky and restless, and he kept looking over his shoulder like someone was following him. If I had to guess, he was high on something. Every instinct in me told me to cancel the ride and drive away. My finger even hovered over the cancel button. But I didn't. For reasons I still can't explain, I unlocked the doors. He slid into the back seat without saying a single word, and instantly I regretted it. Most passengers look at their phones, stare out the window, or at least try to act normal. Not this guy. He sat directly behind me, staring at me through the rearview mirror. No blinking, no looking away, just staring. I tried not to look back, but every time my eyes drifted up, he met my gaze. And the worst part? He looked angry, not annoyed, angry. Trying to break the tension, I reached for the radio. I don't even remember what station I turned on, because before the first second of music finished playing, he barked at me to turn it off. His voice was deep, raspy, definitely a heavy smoker. I flinched so hard I jerked the steering wheel. I didn't argue. I shut the radio off and gripped the wheel harder than I needed to. Silence filled the car. For a while, I hoped he'd just sit quietly until we got to his destination. But then he spoke. He asked if I'd ever picked up someone I shouldn't have. That question hit me like a punch in the chest. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Well, I hope not." I tried to keep it light, but he didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just muttered something under his breath that I couldn't make out. Then he started talking about how he used to be an Uber driver and how he quit after some punks stole stuff from his car. His words were slurred and messy, but I understood enough. What disturbed me wasn't the story. It was the smile on his face the entire time he told it, the kind of smile that doesn't belong in a story like that. He ended with a line that genuinely made my blood run cold. It's funny how much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just some weird high guy. This was a potential threat. My heartbeat kicked into overdrive. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind raced. I glanced at the GPS like it was my only lifeline. But he didn't stop talking. He mumbled nonsense, some of it random, some of it concerning. At one point, he started apologizing to someone, not me, someone in his head. He kept whispering, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't want to set him off. We were only a few minutes away from his stop when he suddenly snapped out of his daze and yelled that I missed a turn. I didn't. The GPS showed we were on the correct route, but I hit the brakes anyway, purely out of fear. He demanded I pull over. My hands were trembling as I shifted into park. Just then, headlights appeared behind us, a police car. I silently thanked whatever higher power exists. The police cruiser rolled slowly past, its spotlight sweeping over my car. The man in my back seat immediately slid down, trying to hide, lying almost completely flat across the seat with his eyes closed, as if pretending to be unconscious. I stared straight ahead, trying to stay calm. He stayed like that for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, without warning, he sat up and quietly said, "You got lucky?" Before I could react, he opened the door and slipped out into the darkness. No goodbye, no acknowledgement, just vanished. I drove home early that night. No more rides. I was too shaken. A few weeks later, I stumbled across a news article on my phone. A convenience store had been robbed that same night, 2 blocks from where I picked him up. Reading that made me sick. I was inches away from a dangerous criminal who could have easily hurt me. I thought about contacting the police, but for multiple personal reasons, I try to avoid law enforcement. I'm not even sure my report would help. Since that night, though, one thing changed. I am much, much more careful about who I let into my car. I remember the morning it happened as clearly as if it were happening right now. A thin, high-pitched noise drifted out from the bedroom closet, the one where our water heater sat. It was just after 6, and I had work in a few hours, so getting woken up by what I assumed was a malfunctioning heater put me in a miserable mood. My movement must have woken David too, or maybe he heard the noise at the same time. Either way, he groaned and asked what was going on. "The water heater's making some weird sound," I muttered. "Can you check it?" I know it was selfish, but it was his day off. Losing sleep wasn't a big problem for him. For me, it meant dragging myself through a long shift like a zombie. He didn't complain, just sighed, rolled out of bed, and trudged over to the closet. The moment he opened the door and the sound grew clearer, my irritation evaporated. That wasn't a machine noise. As I sat up, I caught sight of David's face, eyes wide, mouth dropped open. And when I walked over to look for myself, my gut confirmed the impossible truth before my brain allowed the words to form. It's a baby," I whispered. "I can see that," David muttered, still stunned. "But how did it—" Neither of us could finish that question. It was too ridiculous, too unreal. A newborn, completely naked, lay on its back on the wooden floor, giving soft, mewing cries, eyes closed, tiny arms and legs twitching gently in the dim light. For a second, I grabbed David's arm, stopping him from picking it up. A primal fear flared up inside me. Something about all of this felt wrong, unnatural. But soon the instinct to protect took over the disbelief. We decided the only rational move was to call Child Protective Services when they opened at 9:30. We could freak out later. The baby needed care first. But I had to leave for work by 9, so it fell on David to handle it. I hated leaving him alone with such a bizarre situation. But what could I do? Call into work and say we found a mystery baby in our heater closet? They'd think I'd lost my mind. At work, I couldn't focus at all. I spent the entire morning texting David, asking for updates. He called CPS at 9:30, was on hold until 9:45, then finally spoke to someone. She thought he was joking at first. But once he convinced her, she told him the same thing we'd said to ourselves. Focus on getting the baby safe. Answers come later. She said an agent would be at our apartment by 11. That eased me a little, but not for long. 11 passed, then 11:30, then 11:45. No one had arrived. David called them again to ask what was going on. That was the last message I got. I texted several times. No reply. Called him. Nothing. By the time my lunch break started at 12:30, I practically sprinted to my car and drove home. Halfway there, an unknown number called. I answered through hands-free. "Hello, may I speak with Katie Weston?" a woman asked. "Speaking." "This is Mona from Child Protective Services. An agent went to your apartment for the infant pickup, but no one answered the door. Could you have your partner call us back so we can reschedule?" My chest tightened. "Of course, I'll get him to call right away." We hung up, and the rest of the drive felt like an eternity. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones. I parked, rushed inside, climbed the stairs, reached our door, unlocked it, and called out for David. No response. Maybe he took the baby to the ER. That thought scared me more. The idea that something had gone so wrong, he had no choice. But stepping into the living room shattered every hope, every assumption. In the middle of the wooden floor lay a corpse, or what was left of one. It barely resembled a human body, clothing shredded into blood-soaked scraps, huge sections of flesh ripped away. The face was completely gone, the torso hollowed out, thighs torn open until bare bone glistened in the daylight, and crouched over the mangled body was an adult human, or something shaped like one, naked, hairless, skin smeared entirely in blood. It was tearing chunks of meat from the corpse with its teeth, ripping and chewing like an animal. When it heard me, it lifted its head. Pieces of flesh slipped from its mouth and hit the floor with wet thuds. I froze. Its face, beneath the blood and gore, was David's. But this thing was not him, could never be him. And when it spoke, I knew it with absolute certainty. "Mama?" That hopeful, infant-like whisper made every nerve in my body ice over. For a few seconds I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Every signal in my body shut down in terror. The creature stared at me, smiling. A warm, almost loving smile, as bloody saliva dripped down its chin. Only when it began to stand did my body jolt awake. Survival took over. I ran, down the stairs, out the building, into my car. When I dialed 911, I knew I couldn't tell the truth. No one would believe it. They'd think I was insane. So I just said someone had been murdered in my apartment and the killer was still there. Then the call suddenly cut into dead silence. A moment later, a robotic, distorted voice came through. "Remain in your vehicle. When officers arrive, you will identify yourself and follow all instructions. Thank you for your cooperation." Nothing about that was normal for an emergency call, but I was too terrified to question it. Within minutes, a large unmarked van screeched into the parking lot. Men dressed like tactical officers poured out, no badges, no identifiers. I stepped out, told them who I was, just like the voice told me to. Without a word, one grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the van. I shouted that the killer was upstairs and they had the wrong person. They didn't respond. They tied my wrists with black restraints, blindfolded me, and pressed noise-canceling muffs over my ears. Under any other circumstance, I would have fought. But I was broken. I'd seen too much. My brain simply shut down into compliance. The van started moving. I shook uncontrollably the entire ride, silently crying, unable to make sense of anything. When we finally stopped, they led me, still blind and deaf, into a building and sat me in a hard plastic chair. Eventually, they removed the blindfold and headphones. I was in what looked exactly like a police interrogation room. Everything was gray. Walls, table, chairs, even the one-way glass. A man sat across from me. He looked like a retired school teacher, tweed jacket, bow tie, curly hair receding heavily. His smile was gentle, almost soothing, but his eyes held something predatory beneath the politeness. "Hello, Katie," he said softly. "My name is Wendell. How are you feeling?" Under the circumstances, the question felt cruel. "Where am I?" was all I could manage. "Somewhere secure," he said calmly. "You're safe now, but I'm afraid I have bad news." My heart clenched. "Where's David?" "I'm sorry," he said with a sympathetic tilt of his head. "David died this morning." I swallowed hard. Tears burned my eyes. "I know," I whispered. I saw what happened, that thing, that..." His expression tightened into confusion. "What thing, Katie?" "The thing in my apartment, the thing that was eating him." His head tilted like a therapist trying to gently correct a delusion. "Ah," he said quietly. "This is an extreme stress reaction. Understandable, given the trauma." "I'm not delusional," I shouted. "I know what I saw. It wasn't human. It had his face. But it wasn't him and the baby. The baby we found..." "Katie," he said firmly in a scolding tone, "you did not find a baby. This is your mind's way of coping with grief. You're having a psychological break." "The hell I am. I know what happened." "Katie," he continued gently, "there was a gas explosion in your apartment. That's what killed David. Firefighters have been handling the scene for hours." "You're lying." The words burst out of me. "You're lying to me. I know what I saw." But he only gave a patient smile. I stared at him, trying to understand if he genuinely believed his story or was deliberately covering something up. Every detail of what I'd lived through made it impossible that I'd hallucinated it all. Being blindfolded, abducted, transported here. Something much bigger was happening, something they did not want exposed. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Mark, are you a cop? A doctor? What is this place?" "I already told you," he replied. "My name is Wendell, and the people I work with want to help you. But if you continue insisting on this fantasy, we may be forced to hold you for your own safety." "Hold me where?" I asked, terror creeping back in. "A facility," he said simply. "A place you wouldn't want to stay." That was the threat, plain and clear. He slid a document toward me, a statement waiting for a signature. "All you have to do is sign here," he said softly, "and the healing can begin." "You're not giving me a choice," I whispered. "We always have a choice," he said. "Sign it and David's family will receive the settlement owed to them by the company responsible for the accident, enough to take care of them for the rest of their lives." And that broke me. David had no savings, no life insurance. His family would be left with nothing unless I signed. My hand trembled. "Did I need a pen?" I finally said. Wendell's smile twisted with satisfaction as he reached into his jacket. "It has been nearly 3 years since that day. David was the gentlest, kindest man I ever knew. And because of that, I refuse to stay silent anymore. I will not help them bury the truth. I don't know what killed him. I don't know what that creature was or where it came from. But I know this. If the truth is being covered up, it means whatever killed him is still out there." My buddy and I'll call him Bud, decided last fall that we needed a break from work, life, and everything in between. Just a simple guy's weekend. Cold beers, a tent older than time itself, a few hot dogs, and a fire big enough to keep the world away. We picked this forest up near the Vermont border, a place with the insane name Satan's Kingdom. Yeah, that's actually what it's called. Look it up if you don't believe me. The name alone made us laugh and instantly sold us on the idea. We loaded up the Jeep with a cooler full of beers, our sleeping bags, and this ancient tent that probably survived 3 generations before us. The plan was simple. Hike in, set up camp, drink, relax, and forget responsibilities. For a night or 2, nothing crazy, nothing dangerous. Just dudes unwinding. Day 1 was perfect. We found a small clearing about a mile in, surrounded by old pine trees that smelled like Christmas morning. We pitched the tent, stacked up firewood, and spent half the afternoon tossing a frisbee like a pair of overgrown kids. When nighttime came, the fire was roaring, the hot dogs were sizzling, and the beers tasted colder than mountain water. We joked about how we'd survive a zombie apocalypse out here. It was one of those nights where everything felt fun, stupid, and easy. Then came day 2. Late afternoon, the sun starting to sink. Bud went off into the trees to grab firewood while I stayed behind, trying to coax life out of the fire. I was squinting and poking at it like a caveman reenacting old history when I suddenly heard Bud shouting, really shouting, like he just stumbled into a bear's mouth. I dropped the stick, sprinted toward him, and found him crashing through the brush like something was chasing him. His face was pale, his eyes huge, and he was clutching his forearm like it was falling apart. I asked what happened, and he gasped out, "A bug bit me, huge one, like massive." I figured he was being dramatic. Everyone exaggerates bug bites, but when he pulled his hand away from his arm, I almost gagged. His forearm had this fat, angry red welt, and right in the middle were 2 large puncture marks. Not little pinpricks, deep holes, almost like something had drilled into his skin. They were oozing this yellowish fluid that made my stomach twist. Bud wasn't the type to freak out over insects. He once took a wasp sting straight to the face at a barbecue and just shrugged it off. This was different. He looked genuinely terrified. I got him back to camp and practically tore apart our bags looking for the first aid kit. Thank God I had packed it. I slapped antiseptic on the bite, wrapped his arm up tight, and tried to keep my voice steady while he winced and swore under his breath. "You'll be fine, dude. We'll laugh about this later," I told him. He didn't laugh. He just stared at the fire like he was waiting for it to tell him something. As the sun dipped, he only got worse. Even though the temperature was dropping fast, Bud was sweating like he'd run a marathon. He kept saying he felt dizzy. I piled logs onto the fire, trying to keep him warm, but he shifted constantly, shivering in his sleeping bag 1 minute, kicking it off the next. At one point he croaked, "Man, I feel awful." And his voice sounded thin, dry, wrong. His arm looked even worse, red streaks crawling up from the bite like infection spreading under his skin. I'm no doctor, but I knew that wasn't good. Around midnight, after he started dry heaving into the bushes, I made a decision. Screw this. We're going to the hospital. But Bud, stubborn as always, muttered, "No way, just take me home. I'm not paying $1,000 for them to tell me I've got a fever." He wouldn't budge, and at the time, I didn't want to fight him. So we packed up fast, tossed everything into my old Jeep, and drove off. The drive back was awful, pitch black roads twisting through miles of forest. Bud curled in the passenger seat, like he was minutes from passing out. I cranked the heater to full blast, but he kept shaking, mumbling, groaning. About 20 minutes in, he suddenly shot upright, panic in his eyes. Pull over! I need to use the bathroom, now!" Before I could even slow down properly, he was clawing at the door handle. I swerved onto the shoulder, and he jumped out and staggered into the big empty field beside the road. No houses, no lights, nothing but trees on one side and darkness on the other. I sat in the Jeep, listening to the engine tick, watching my breath fog in the air, and wondering how everything went so wrong. Then I heard it, this horrible scream, not a startled yelp, a raw, blood-freezing scream full of terror. I shot out of the Jeep, yelling his name, and before I could run into the field, Bud came stumbling toward me as fast as he could. His face was white, and his hands were covered in blood up to the wrists. Before I could even ask what happened, he gasped, "We gotta go. Now!" We scrambled back into the Jeep. Bud collapsed into the seat and yelled, "Hospital, now go!" I didn't argue. I floored it. I asked him over and over what happened, whether he was hurt, if something attacked him, but he just shook his head, curled up, and begged me to drive faster. It took 20 agonizing minutes to reach the nearest hospital. The moment we rushed inside, the staff took one look at him and pulled him straight into the back. I was left behind pacing like a lunatic, fueling my panic with terrible vending machine coffee. An hour later, a doctor came out and asked if Bud had been attacked, if he'd experienced memory loss, if he had mentioned anything strange happening. I told him all I knew. He'd been bitten by some giant bug and got sick fast. I had no idea what happened in the field. Well, they finally let me see him. Bud looked awful, hooked up to IVs, but he was alive. The doctor said it was a severe infection. They gave him antibiotics and kept him overnight before releasing him. But something was off. The whole ride home, he stared out the window like the world outside terrified him. He didn't say a single word. Weeks passed and I realized Bud was avoiding me. No texts, no calls, nothing. So I showed up at his apartment, refused to leave, and eventually cornered him. He looked terrible, pale, jittery, dark circles under his eyes. His place was a mess, like he hadn't cleaned or slept properly in weeks. After practically begging him to talk, he made me swear I wouldn't tell anyone. Then he told me what really happened in that field. When he first went out there, he thought it was just diarrhea, but nothing came out right away. Instead, he felt this horrible, ripping pressure, like his guts were twisting or something was forcing its way out of him. He pushed and pushed until finally something came out, but it didn't feel normal. He turned around to see, thinking he'd just had the worst stomach episode of his life. But instead, something was moving at his feet. Something alive. Something crawling in the grass. And that's when he realized all the blood on his hands and legs wasn't from the bug bite. It was from whatever he had just expelled. He freaked out and ran. He told me, voice shaking, that he keeps dreaming about it, hearing little clicking sounds, seeing it skitter toward him in the dark. He wakes up screaming, still feeling like something inside him is shifting, waiting. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if he was losing his mind from the infection or if something genuinely horrifying had happened inside his body that night. But here's the truth. Bud doesn't lie. Bud doesn't imagine things. And Bud is absolutely terrified. And what scares me more is the thought I can't get out of my head. Whatever bit him out there in Satan's kingdom, whatever he left behind in that field, it's still out there. And maybe it's not done yet.